I'm Emma Rodriguez, and at 28, I never imagined that buying my mother her dream home would ignite a war with my younger sister that nearly destroyed our family. When Nicole discovered I was planning to surprise our mom Carmen with the 3-bedroom house she'd been renting for years, she launched a calculated campaign to sabotage Mother's Day and turn our family against me. What my sister didn't anticipate was that her jealousy would backfire spectacularly when Mom opened an envelope that contained the deed to the house she thought she'd never own. The moment Nicole realized she'd spent months trying to destroy, the most generous gift our mother had ever received became the day our family dynamics shifted forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Growing up in the desert heat of Phoenix, Arizona, our family's story began in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in Maryvale, where the air conditioning unit wheezed through scorching summers, and the thin walls meant we could hear every conversation our neighbors had. My mother, Carmen, worked double shifts at Desert View Elementary School, serving lunch to hundreds of children while juggling weekend catering gigs to keep our rent paid and food on our table. The apartment complex, built in the 1980s with faded stucco walls and a perpetually broken pool, housed mostly single mothers like my mom, who were doing their best to create stability for their children despite circumstances that seemed determined to work against them. Our father, Miguel, had walked out on a Tuesday morning when I was 14 and Nicole was 11, leaving behind nothing but unpaid bills and the lingering scent of his cologne in the bathroom cabinet. I still remember the sound of his truck pulling away from the parking lot while Nicole pressed her face against our bedroom window, asking me when Daddy was coming back from his work trip. The lie came easily then because the truth felt too heavy for an 11-year-old to carry. But that morning marked the beginning of my transformation from big sister to second parent, a role I embraced with the fierce determination that would later define every major decision in my life. Carmen never spoke badly about our father, even when the electricity got turned off, or when we had to choose between buying school supplies and paying for car repairs. She would simply tighten her ponytail, put on her uniform, and head to work with the kind of quiet dignity that taught me more about strength than any motivational speech ever could. Evenings found her at our small kitchen table, surrounded by bills and calculators, trying to stretch every dollar while Nicole and I did homework on the couch because the table was occupied by the mathematics of survival. Those nights, I would watch my mother's face in the lamplight, noticing how she would pause sometimes and stare at the apartment rental ads in the newspaper, running her finger over houses she knew we could never afford. The turning point came during my sophomore year of high school, when Mrs. Patterson, our elderly neighbor who had lived in the complex longer than anyone could remember, had a heart attack in her apartment. Carmen found her 3 days later when she noticed Mrs. Patterson's mail piling up, and the incident shook our entire building community. As we sat in the hospital waiting room, Mrs. Patterson gripped my mother's hand and whispered about her biggest regret being that she had never owned a home, never had a place that truly belonged to her. That night, Carmen sat Nicole and me down and made us promise that we would work hard enough to never depend on landlords or live at the mercy of rent increases that could displace us at any moment. The promise settled into my bones like a sacred vow, and I threw myself into academics with laser focus while Nicole seemed to drift toward different priorities. Where I spent afternoons studying and working part-time jobs, Nicole discovered social media and the intoxicating world of followers and likes that made her believe success could come without the grinding work that consumed my teenage years. Our paths diverged gradually, like two streams flowing in different directions, but I assumed our shared love for our mother would always be the common ground that kept us connected as sisters and allies in the mission to build a better life for our family. High school graduation brought acceptance letters and scholarship opportunities that felt like winning the lottery after years of financial uncertainty. Carmen cried when I received a partial scholarship to Arizona State University, not just from pride but from relief that her daughter might escape the cycle of economic struggle that had defined her own life. I chose real estate as my major after researching careers that could provide financial stability while allowing me to help families find homes, a decision that felt like honoring both my mother's dreams and Mrs. Patterson's regrets in a single choice that would shape my entire future. College years blurred together in a montage of morning classes, afternoon study sessions, and evening shifts at a local restaurant where I served tables to pay for textbooks and gas money. Nicole, meanwhile, seemed to coast through high school with minimal effort, more interested in building her Instagram following than planning for her future. The contrast between our approaches created subtle tension during family dinners, where Carmen would praise my achievements while gently encouraging Nicole to think about her post-graduation plans. I tried to be supportive, offering to help Nicole with college applications or job searches, but she would deflect with jokes about me being the responsible one while she was living life and enjoying her youth. After graduation, I landed an entry-level position at Premier Properties, a well-established real estate agency in Scottsdale, where the commission structure rewarded hard work and the mentorship program connected new agents with seasoned professionals who understood the Arizona market. My mentor, Robert Martinez, had built his career helping first-time homebuyers navigate the complex process of purchasing property, and he taught me that real estate was about more than transactions. It was about understanding people's dreams and helping them become reality. Under his guidance, I learned to read market trends, understand financing options, and most importantly, how to listen to what clients truly needed versus what they thought they wanted. The first year in real estate tested every ounce of determination I possessed, with long days of cold calling, weekend open houses, and nights spent learning about mortgage rates and property values until the numbers swam before my tired eyes. Commission-based income meant some months were feast while others were famine, but I maintained a strict budget that allowed me to send money home to help Carmen with unexpected expenses while slowly building my own emergency fund. Nicole, who had graduated high school and was working part-time at Grind Coffee House while pursuing her dream of becoming a social media influencer, often made comments about my obsession with money and work, suggesting that I was missing out on the fun. Parts of being in my 20s. By my second year at Premier Properties, the hard work began yielding results as referrals, and repeat clients started generating steady income that exceeded anything I had imagined possible during those college restaurant shifts. Robert taught me that success in real estate came from building relationships and providing exceptional service, values that aligned perfectly with my desire to help families achieve homeownership dreams similar to my mother's. I specialized in working with first-time buyers, particularly single mothers and young families who reminded me of our own situation, and found deep satisfaction in guiding them through the process of finding not just houses but homes where they could build their futures. The breakthrough moment came during my third year when I closed 3 high-value properties in a single month, earning more commission than Carmen made in 6 months at the school cafeteria. That evening, I sat in my small but comfortable condo in Tempe, surrounded by congratulatory flowers from clients and colleagues, and realized I had reached the point where I could finally begin saving seriously toward the goal that had driven me since Mrs. Patterson's hospital room conversation. The dream of buying my mother a house was no longer a distant fantasy, but an achievable goal that required only discipline, time, and continued success in the career I had grown to love. Carmen had been renting the same small house in Maryvale for the past 5 years, a modest 2-bedroom with a tiny backyard where she grew tomatoes and chili peppers in pots because the landlord didn't allow ground planting. The house represented stability after years of apartment living, but the monthly rent consumed nearly half her income, and the landlord's recent hints about selling the property had created anxiety about potential displacement that kept my mother awake at night. During one of our weekly Sunday dinners, Carmen mentioned casually that she had driven through Ahwatukee foothills and seen houses with for sale signs, wondering aloud what it would feel like to own a home where she could paint the walls any color she wanted and plant a real garden without asking permission. That conversation planted the seed of what would become my secret mission for the following year. I began researching properties in Ahwatukee, A family-friendly neighborhood with good schools, safe streets, and the kind of mountain views that made Arizona sunsets spectacular. The area was more expensive than Maryvale, but not beyond reach. For someone with my income and the substantial down payment I was determined to save, I created a separate savings account specifically for this purpose, automatically transferring a significant portion of each commission check while maintaining my own modest lifestyle, and continuing to help Carmen with occasional expenses that stretched her tight budget. The house hunting process became my secret second job, with weekend drives through neighborhoods where I imagined my mother tending a proper garden and hosting family gatherings in a living room large enough for everyone to sit comfortably. I worked with David Thompson, a mortgage broker who understood my goal and helped me understand the financing options that would make the purchase possible while ensuring I could afford the ongoing payments if my income fluctuated. Together, we calculated that I needed to save for 18 months to have enough for a down payment, closing costs, and a buffer for any unexpected expenses that might arise during the process. Nicole remained focused on her social media presence, posting daily content about her coffee shop job, weekend adventures with friends, and shopping hauls funded by money she regularly borrowed from Carmen and occasionally from me. Her follower count grew steadily, and she spoke constantly about monetizing her platform and becoming a full-time influencer, though her actual earnings from sponsored posts remained minimal compared to the time and energy she invested in creating content. The contrast between our priorities became more pronounced as I worked longer hours and weekends to accelerate my savings timeline, while Nicole seemed to view my dedication as both boring and unnecessary, since she believed success should come more easily. Family dynamics during this period felt stable on the surface, with our traditional Sunday dinners at Carmen's house providing regular connection and our group text thread maintaining daily communication about work stories, funny, memes, and scheduling for shared activities. However, subtle tensions simmered beneath the surface as Nicole made increasingly frequent comments about my work schedule, my reluctance to join her for expensive nights out, and what she perceived as my tendency to lecture her about financial responsibility. I tried to balance supporting my sister's dreams while staying focused on my own goals, but the gap between our values and priorities seemed to widen with each passing month. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. The house I eventually found exceeded every expectation I had dared to imagine for my mother's future home. Located on a quiet cul-de-sac in Ahwatukee foothills, the 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom house featured an open floor plan with vaulted ceilings, a modern kitchen with granite countertops that Carmen would love for her cooking projects, and a backyard with mature citrus trees and space for the vegetable garden she had always wanted to plant. The mountain views from the master bedroom would give her something beautiful to wake up to every morning, and the 2-car garage would protect her aging Honda from the harsh Arizona sun that had faded the paint and cracked the dashboard over years of parking in uncovered spaces. David helped me structure an offer that was competitive, but within my budget, and when the sellers accepted, I felt a rush of excitement mixed with terror at the magnitude of what I was undertaking. The mortgage approval process required extensive documentation of my income and employment history, but my track record of success at Premier Properties and my substantial down payment made me an attractive borrower despite my relatively young age. Throughout the escrow period, I maintained absolute secrecy about the purchase, telling Carmen only that I was working on a special project that would be revealed in time while deflecting Nicole's casual questions about my increased work schedule and weekend absences. The plan crystallized around Mother's Day, which fell perfectly within my timeline for closing on the house and provided the perfect occasion for such a momentous gift. Carmen had always made Mother's Day special for us. Growing up, despite having limited resources, organizing small celebrations that focused on time together rather than expensive presents. This year, I wanted to reverse roles and give her something that would change her life in the same profound way she had changed mine, by working so hard to provide opportunities for my education and career. The symbolism of giving her a home on Mother's Day felt perfect, representing both gratitude for her sacrifices and hope for a future where she would never again worry about landlords or rent increases. The first crack in our family foundation appeared on a scorching Tuesday afternoon in March, when Nicole burst through the door of Carmen's house during one of my surprise visits, her phone already recording as she prepared to document what she assumed would be another ordinary family moment for her Instagram stories. I had stopped by to help Carmen fix a leaky faucet in her kitchen, a recurring problem that the landlord kept promising to address but never seemed to prioritize, when Nicole's dramatic entrance shifted the entire energy of the afternoon. She paused mid-sentence when she noticed the stack of real estate magazines I had accidentally left on the kitchen counter, publications I had been using to research market trends and neighborhood comparisons for my secret house hunting mission. Carmen was in the bathroom when Nicole picked up the magazines, flipping through pages marked with sticky notes and highlighted sections about Ahwatukee properties. The suspicious look that crossed her face made my stomach clench with anxiety about maintaining the secrecy that was crucial to my Mother's Day surprise. Nicole held up a magazine featuring a gorgeous house with mountain views, the exact type of property I had been researching for months, and asked with exaggerated casualness why I was suddenly so interested in expensive neighborhoods that none of us could afford. Her tone carried an edge of accusation, as if my interest in real estate beyond my professional obligations represented some kind of betrayal or abandonment of our family's economic reality. I deflected quickly, explaining that staying informed about different market segments was essential for serving diverse clients and building credibility as a real estate professional. The explanation seemed to satisfy her momentarily, but I noticed how her eyes lingered on the magazines even after Carmen returned to the kitchen, chattering about her excitement for the upcoming Mother's Day weekend and her plans to cook a special breakfast for the three of us. The conversation should have felt warm and anticipatory, but Nicole's sudden quietness and the way she kept glancing between the magazines and me created an undercurrent of tension that hadn't existed before her discovery of my research materials. The weeks following that afternoon brought subtle but noticeable changes in Nicole's behavior during our family interactions. She began asking pointed questions about my work schedule, particularly my weekend activities and evening commitments, probing for details about client meetings and property showings with an intensity that felt more like interrogation than sisterly interest. During our group text conversations, she would screenshot real estate listings from expensive neighborhoods and send them with comments about how ridiculous it was that people spent so much money on houses when there were more important things in life. Her social media posts increasingly featured content about family loyalty and staying true to your roots, messages that felt directed at me despite being addressed to her general audience. Carmen seemed oblivious to the growing tension, focused instead on spring cleaning projects and her annual tradition of planning an elaborate Mother's Day celebration that brought our extended family together for food, laughter, and the kind of intergenerational bonding that had sustained us through years of financial uncertainty. She spoke excitedly about trying new recipes and decorating the small house with flowers from her potted garden, projects that filled her with joy despite the constraints of renting a space where major improvements weren't allowed. Watching her enthusiasm while knowing that I was planning to give her a home where she could finally make permanent changes and investments filled me with anticipation that made it increasingly difficult to maintain the casual demeanor necessary for keeping my secret. The breakthrough moment in my house hunting journey came on a Saturday morning in early April when David called to inform me that the sellers of my dream house had accepted my offer and we could proceed with escrow procedures. The news hit me like a lightning bolt of pure excitement mixed with terror, the realization that I was actually going to purchase a house for my mother, transforming from abstract goal to concrete reality in the span of a single phone conversation. I was sitting in my condo when David called, surrounded by financial documents and mortgage paperwork, and the moment he delivered the good news, I had to resist the urge to immediately drive to Carmen's house and share the incredible development. Instead, I channeled the excitement into meticulous planning for the surprise reveal, researching ideas for presentation and timing that would maximize the emotional impact of the moment when Carmen discovered that she was about to become a homeowner. I imagined her face when she realized that the house keys in her hands represented freedom from landlords, security from displacement, and the fulfillment of dreams she had carried since childhood but never believed were achievable. The vision of that moment became my motivation for maintaining secrecy, despite the increasing difficulty of hiding my excitement and the practical challenges of coordinating inspections, appraisals, and closing procedures without arousing suspicion from family members who knew my schedule intimately. Nicole's surveillance of my activities intensified as April progressed, with unexpected phone calls during times when she knew I should be available, and surprise visits to my condo that seemed designed to catch me off guard or discover evidence of whatever she suspected I was hiding. Her questions became more specific and aggressive, asking about my recent commission earnings, my savings goals, and my long-term plans for financial investments with a persistence that felt invasive and uncomfortable. When I maintained my privacy about personal financial matters, she accused me of becoming secretive and distant, suggesting that success was changing my personality in ways that were damaging our family relationships. The confrontation that revealed the depth of Nicole's suspicions occurred on a Thursday evening when she arrived at my condo unannounced, claiming she wanted to borrow money for car repairs, but clearly hoping to snoop through my personal belongings while I searched for my checkbook. I had left mortgage documents on my dining table after a phone consultation with David, papers that Nicole spotted immediately and began examining before I could intervene. Her shocked expression when she read the property address and purchase price told me that my secret was no longer safe, and the accusations that followed confirmed that her suspicions had evolved into full-blown conspiracy theories about my motives and intentions. Nicole accused me of planning to abandon the family by purchasing an expensive house in an upscale neighborhood, suggesting that my success had made me ashamed of our humble background and eager to distance myself from the economic struggles that still defined her daily life. Her voice rose with each accusation, painting my house purchase as an act of selfishness and betrayal, rather than the generous gift I had intended to surprise our mother with on Mother's Day. The confrontation escalated when I tried to explain the truth about my plans, but Nicole's anger had reached a point where rational conversation became impossible, and she stormed out of my condo with threats to expose my deception to Carmen and the rest of our family. The following days brought a campaign of subtle sabotage as Nicole began planting seeds of doubt about my character and motivations during her interactions with Carmen, never directly revealing what she had discovered but creating an atmosphere of suspicion and concern about my recent behavior and priorities. She would mention casually that I seemed stressed and secretive lately, suggesting that perhaps success was creating pressure or problems that I wasn't sharing with the family. Her comments were carefully crafted to seem like caring concern while actually undermining the trust and excitement that Carmen felt about my professional achievements and personal growth. Carmen began asking me gentle questions about my well-being and work satisfaction, inquiries that revealed Nicole's influence while also demonstrating our mother's genuine care for my happiness and mental health. The questions broke my heart, because they represented Carmen's loving concern being weaponized by Nicole's jealousy, turning my mother's natural protectiveness into a tool for creating doubt about my intentions and character. I wanted desperately to reassure Carmen by revealing the truth about my house purchase, but doing so would ruin the Mother's Day surprise that had become the driving motivation for months of hard work and careful planning. The mortgage approval process reached its final stages as Mother's Day approached, with inspections, appraisals, and title work proceeding smoothly despite my emotional turmoil over Nicole's discovery and her ongoing campaign to undermine my relationship with Carmen. David handled the technical aspects with professional competence while providing emotional support for the stress of managing such a significant financial transaction, while navigating family drama that threatened to overshadow the joy I had anticipated feeling during this milestone moment. Each step toward closing brought me closer to achieving my dream of giving Carmen homeownership, but also closer to the confrontation that seemed inevitable given Nicole's escalating hostility. The breaking point arrived exactly 1 week before Mother's Day, when Nicole cornered me in the parking lot after Carmen's shift at the elementary school, demanding that I confess my plans to abandon the family and move to Ahwatukee while leaving them behind in Maryvale. Her accusations had evolved into a complete misunderstanding of my intentions, fueled by her own insecurities and financial struggles that made my success feel like a personal attack rather than an achievement to celebrate. I tried once again to explain that the house was intended as a gift for Carmen, not a personal residence for me. But Nicole's jealousy had created a narrative that couldn't accommodate the truth no matter how clearly I presented it. Nicole's response to my explanation revealed the depth of her transformation from concerned sister to active saboteur, as she declared that she wouldn't allow me to manipulate Carmen with expensive gifts that were designed to make her feel guilty and dependent. Her twisted interpretation of my generosity as manipulation showed how completely jealousy had distorted her perception of family loyalty and love, turning the most selfless act I had ever attempted into evidence of selfish manipulation. The conversation ended with Nicole's promise to protect Carmen from what she saw as my attempt to control the family through financial leverage, a threat that chilled me because I recognized the determination in her voice as matching my own when I committed to pursuing goals that mattered deeply to me. The final week before Mother's Day became a delicate balance between completing the house purchase procedures and managing the escalating tension with Nicole, who had recruited her best friend Brittany and boyfriend Tyler to support her campaign against what she described as my attempt to break up the family with money. Her social media posts during this period featured subtle messages about family loyalty, staying true to your roots, and recognizing manipulation disguised as generosity, content that her followers interpreted as inspirational, but that I recognized as directed attacks on my character and motivations. The posts gained traction with comments supporting her perspective on family values, creating a public narrative that portrayed her as the defender of authentic relationships against materialistic corruption. Carmen remained unaware of the war being waged around her, focused instead on preparing for Mother's Day with the innocent excitement of someone anticipating a pleasant family celebration, rather than a dramatic revelation that would reshape her entire living situation. Her happiness during our interactions filled me with determination to proceed with my surprise despite Nicole's threats, because giving Carmen the security and pride of home ownership mattered more than managing my sister's jealousy and insecurity. The house closing was scheduled for the Friday before Mother's Day, timing that would allow me to present the keys and deed to Carmen during our traditional Sunday brunch with perfect symbolic significance. Thursday evening brought the final confrontation with Nicole, who arrived at my condo with Brittany and Tyler for what she described as an intervention to save our family from my destructive behavior. The three of them sat across from me in my living room, with Nicole leading a rehearsed presentation about the importance of family loyalty and the dangers of using money to control relationships, while Brittany and Tyler provided supportive commentary that revealed how thoroughly Nicole had convinced them of her version of events. Their collective concern felt genuine but misguided, based on Nicole's interpretation of my actions rather than understanding of my actual intentions, and my attempts to correct their misconceptions were dismissed as defensive manipulation. The fee intervention escalated when Nicole demanded that I cancel my house purchase and instead use the money to help the entire family with various financial needs, a suggestion that revealed her fundamental misunderstanding of my gift, while also demonstrating her own financial desperation and entitlement. Tyler suggested that buying a house for Carmen would create pressure and responsibility that she didn't want or need, while Brittany worried that such an expensive gift would make other family members feel inadequate and competitive. Their concerns might have been valid if my gift had been motivated by a desire to show off or control, but their inability to consider the possibility of pure generosity showed how Nicole's narrative had poisoned their perception of my character and motivations. Friday morning arrived with the excitement of closing day mixed with dread about Nicole's promised sabotage of Mother's Day, as I drove to David's office for the final paperwork and key transfer that would officially make me the owner of Carmen's dream house. The closing process felt surreal, signing documents that represented months of planning and saving while knowing that Nicole was simultaneously planning to destroy the surprise I had worked so hard to create. David's congratulations on becoming a homeowner felt bittersweet because the house represented my gift to Carmen rather than my own achievement. But his understanding of my motivations and support for my generosity provided emotional anchoring during a morning that should have been purely celebratory. The house keys felt warm in my palm as I sat in the driveway of the Ahwatukee property, officially mine for exactly 17 minutes, imagining Carmen's face when she discovered that this beautiful space with mountain views and citrus trees and room for a proper garden would be her home for as long as she chose to live there. The vision of her joy and surprise had sustained me through months of secret planning and recent weeks of family conflict, and holding the keys made the gift feel real and imminent despite the obstacles that Nicole was determined to create. I photographed the house from multiple angles, documenting the moment for Carmen while also creating evidence of my intentions in case Nicole's sabotage required me to defend my motivations to extended family members who might be influenced by her version of events. The Mother's Day surprise was less than 48 hours away, and despite Nicole's threats and manipulations, I remained committed to giving Carmen the gift that would transform her life and fulfill dreams she had carried since childhood, but never expected to achieve. The confrontation with Nicole had revealed the cost of my sister's jealousy, but it had also clarified my priorities and strengthened my resolve to honor our mother with generosity that came from love rather than obligation or expectation. Sunday. Morning would bring either the joy I had imagined for months or the family destruction that Nicole had promised. But either way, Carmen would discover that homeownership was no longer an impossible dream, but a reality waiting for her acceptance. Nicole's campaign to destroy my Mother's Day surprise reached new levels of sophistication as she began leveraging her social media platform to build public support for her narrative about family loyalty versus materialistic corruption. Her Instagram stories featured carefully curated content about the importance of staying humble despite success, with photos of our childhood apartment and heartfelt captions about how money changes people, but true family bonds should remain constant. The posts resonated with her followers, who began commenting with their own stories about relatives who became distant after achieving financial success, creating an echo chamber that reinforced Nicole's belief that she was protecting our family from my supposed betrayal. The psychological warfare intensified when Nicole started involving our extended family in her crusade, beginning with our Aunt Rosa, who had always been Carmen's closest confidant and the family mediator during times of conflict. Nicole called Rosa with concerns about my recent behavior, describing my secrecy and increased work hours as evidence that success was isolating me from family values and creating distance that threatened our traditional closeness. Rosa, who genuinely cared about family harmony and had watched our struggles since my father's abandonment, became genuinely worried about the possibility that financial achievement might be creating problems rather than solutions for our family dynamics. The conversations with Rosa were strategically crafted to seem like concerned observations rather than accusations, with Nicole positioning herself as the worried sister who feared losing me to the materialistic world of high-end real estate and wealthy clients. She shared screenshots of my social media posts featuring successful property closings and professional achievements, interpreting my celebration of career milestones as evidence of changing priorities that devalued family relationships. Rosa began calling Carmen with gentle questions about my well-being and work-life balance, conversations that created exactly the kind of maternal concern that Nicole had hoped to generate without revealing her true motivations or the extent of her knowledge about my house purchase. Carmen's growing worry about my mental health and happiness became evident during our regular phone conversations as she began asking pointed questions about whether I was getting enough rest, maintaining friendships outside of work, and finding time for activities that brought me joy rather than just professional advancement. Her questions reflected genuine maternal love, combined with the influence of Nicole's carefully planted concerns, creating a situation where my mother's natural protectiveness was being manipulated to serve my sister's agenda of undermining the surprise that would actually fulfill Carmen's deepest dreams about homeownership and financial security. The most devastating aspect of Nicole's campaign was how she weaponized Carmen's own insecurities about accepting help or feeling like a burden to her children, fears that stemmed from years of financial struggle and her fierce independence despite economic hardship. Nicole began making subtle comments about how successful people sometimes used expensive gifts to make others feel obligated or grateful in ways that created uncomfortable power dynamics within families. These observations, presented as general wisdom rather than specific warnings, planted seeds of doubt about accepting generosity that would make Carmen hesitant to embrace the house gift with the pure joy I had imagined for the surprise revelation. The sabotage strategy expanded to include Tyler, Nicole's boyfriend, who began joining our family gatherings with observations about how money changed people and created artificial barriers between relatives who had previously shared common experiences and values. Tyler's comments seemed casual and philosophical, but they consistently reinforced themes about the corrupting influence of wealth and the importance of maintaining authentic relationships that weren't influenced by financial considerations. His presence at family dinners provided additional support for Nicole's narrative, while also creating an audience for the tension that was building between us as Mother's Day approached. Brittany, Nicole's best friend and constant companion, became another weapon in the campaign as she began sharing social media content about fake people who used money to manipulate relationships and control family dynamics. Her posts, which Nicole enthusiastically shared and commented on, created a public discourse about recognizing manipulation disguised as generosity, content that her followers interpreted as general wisdom, but that I recognized as targeted attacks on my character and motivations. The posts gained significant engagement from people who had their own experiences with family members whose success had created relationship complications, building a community of support for Nicole's perspective that made her feel justified and righteous about her mission to protect Carmen from my supposed manipulation. The week before Mother's Day brought escalating psychological pressure as Nicole increased the frequency and intensity of her interventions, arriving at Carmen's house during my visits with claims that she needed to discuss important family matters that required my input and participation. These conversations always centered around themes of family loyalty, financial responsibility, and the importance of making decisions that prioritized relationships over material achievements. Nicole's arguments were presented with such emotional conviction and apparent concern for family welfare that they created cognitive dissonance for Carmen, who loved both her daughters and couldn't understand why success was creating conflict rather than celebration. The turning point in Nicole's campaign came when she recruited our cousin Maria, who lived in California, and maintained regular phone contact with Carmen despite the geographical distance between them. Nicole called Maria with a carefully crafted story about her concerns regarding my recent behavior and the possibility that career pressure was creating problems that might require family intervention. Maria, who remembered me as the responsible older sister who had always put family first, became genuinely alarmed by Nicole's descriptions of my secretiveness and apparent disconnection from family values. Her subsequent phone calls to Carmen added another voice of concern to the chorus that Nicole was orchestrating, creating the impression that multiple family members had independently noticed troubling changes in my behavior and priorities. Carmen's confusion and worry reached a peak when she began receiving contradictory information about my well-being and motivations from various family members who had been influenced by Nicole's campaign. The woman who had raised me with unconditional love and support suddenly found herself questioning whether my success was creating problems rather than solutions, a doubt that broke my heart every time I saw uncertainty in her eyes during our conversations. Her natural inclination to trust both her daughters equally made it impossible for her to dismiss Nicole's concerns completely, even though nothing in my actual behavior toward her had changed from the loving, supportive relationship we had always maintained. The psychological toll of maintaining secrecy about my house purchase, while defending myself against accusations I couldn't fully address without ruining the surprise, became overwhelming during the final week before Mother's Day. Sleep became elusive as I replayed conversations with family members, searching for ways to reassure them without revealing the truth that would have immediately resolved their concerns about my motivations and character. The isolation created by keeping such a significant secret while facing attacks on my integrity from someone I had loved and protected since childhood felt like carrying a weight that grew heavier with each passing day. Nicole's confidence in her mission reached its zenith when she organized what she called a family meeting for the Saturday before Mother's Day, inviting Rosa, Maria via video call, and several other relatives to discuss their concerns about my recent behavior and its impact on family relationships. The meeting was presented as an intervention motivated by love and concern, but the agenda clearly focused on confronting what Nicole described as my materialistic transformation and its threat to family values. Carmen agreed to attend because she wanted to understand the source of the tension that was affecting our family dynamics, but she remained confused about the specific problems that everyone seemed to recognize except her. The family meeting took place at Rosa's house, a neutral location that Nicole had chosen to create the impression of objectivity and community concern rather than personal vendetta. The attendees arrived with genuine worry about family harmony and my well-being, having been convinced by Nicole's campaign that I was experiencing some kind of crisis that required collective intervention. The atmosphere felt like a tribunal where I was expected to confess to crimes I hadn't committed, while defending motivations that couldn't be revealed without destroying the surprise that had inspired months of planning and sacrifice. Nicole led the meeting with a presentation about the warning signs she had observed in my behavior, including increased work hours, secretiveness about financial matters, and what she characterized as growing distance from family activities and values. Her evidence consisted of misinterpreted observations and assumptions that painted my dedication to the house purchase as neglect of family relationships, rather than preparation for the most generous gift I had ever attempted to give. The presentation was delivered with such apparent sincerity and concern that even I began questioning whether my secrecy had inadvertently created legitimate worry among people who loved me. Rosa expressed concern about my work-life balance and suggested that perhaps the pressure of success was creating stress that manifested as withdrawal from family connections. Maria, participating via video call from California, shared her confusion about why my professional achievements seemed to be creating problems rather than joy, and wondered whether I needed support in managing the pressures that came with financial success. Their questions and concerns reflected genuine love and worry, but they also revealed how effectively Nicole had framed my behavior in ways that suggested problems requiring intervention rather than celebration and support. Carmen sat quietly throughout most of the meeting, listening to relatives express concerns about changes they claimed to observe in my behavior, while struggling to reconcile their observations with her own experience of our relationship, which had remained loving and supportive despite my increased work commitments. Her silence reflected confusion rather than agreement, but Nicole interpreted her failure to defend me as validation of the concerns being expressed by other family members. The meeting created pressure for me to explain my recent behavior and priorities without revealing the house purchase that would have immediately resolved all concerns about my motivations and character. My attempts to address the concerns raised during the meeting were hampered by the need to maintain secrecy about the surprise, forcing me to provide vague reassurances about my commitment to family while avoiding specific explanations that would have revealed my true activities and intentions. The evasiveness that resulted from protecting the surprise was interpreted as confirmation that I was indeed hiding something problematic, creating a cycle where my efforts to preserve the Mother's Day gift actually reinforced suspicions about my character and motivations. The meeting ended with promises to continue monitoring my behavior and providing support for what they believed was a crisis requiring family intervention. The final blow came when Nicole announced that she had planned a special Mother's Day celebration of her own, designed to show Carmen the kind of authentic family love that didn't depend on expensive gifts or materialistic displays of affection. Her alternative celebration would focus on heartfelt gestures, homemade gifts, and quality time that honored traditional family values, rather than what she characterized as my attempt to use money to compensate for emotional distance and neglect. The announcement was presented as a loving tribute to Carmen's sacrifices and values, but it was clearly designed to upstage and diminish the impact of whatever surprise I had planned for the holiday. Nicole's counter-programming included recruiting extended family members to contribute homemade gifts and heartfelt letters that would demonstrate their appreciation for Carmen's love and support without resorting to expensive purchases that might create uncomfortable feelings of obligation or inadequacy. The collaborative nature of her celebration was presented as evidence of authentic family bonds that didn't require financial leverage to create meaning and connection. Her social media documentation of the preparation process created public anticipation for a Mother's Day celebration that would showcase traditional family values, in contrast to what she implied would be my materialistic approach to expressing love and gratitude. The psychological pressure of the family meeting and Nicole's alternative celebration plans created a crisis of confidence about my house gift that made me question whether the surprise would be received with the joy I had anticipated or the suspicion and discomfort that Nicole's campaign had been designed to generate. Carmen's growing confusion about my behavior and motivations meant that even the most generous gift might be interpreted through the lens of doubt that Nicole had carefully cultivated over the preceding weeks. The possibility that my surprise would create more problems than solutions became a source of anxiety that threatened to overshadow the excitement I had felt about giving Carmen homeownership and financial security. Saturday evening found me sitting alone in my condo with the house keys and deed, questioning whether Nicole's sabotage had been so effective that revealing my gift would actually harm, rather than help my relationship with Carmen. The family meeting had created an atmosphere where my generosity might be perceived as manipulation, my success viewed as abandonment, and my love interpreted as control rather than the pure expression of gratitude and hope that had motivated months of planning and sacrifice. The weight of doubt that Nicole had created through her campaign made me wonder whether the surprise revelation would restore family harmony or complete the destruction that jealousy had begun. Mother's Day morning arrived with the kind of perfect Arizona weather that made the desert landscape shimmer with golden light, a stark contrast to the storm of emotions churning in my chest as I prepared for what would either be the most joyful moment of my life or the complete destruction of my family relationships. Nicole had spent the previous evening posting Instagram stories about authentic family love and the importance of meaningful gestures over materialistic displays, building anticipation for her alternative celebration while simultaneously undermining whatever surprise I might have planned. I woke before dawn, holding the house keys that represented months of secret planning and sacrifice, wondering if Nicole's psychological campaign had been so effective that my gift would be perceived as manipulation rather than love. The morning began with traditional Mother's Day routines as our extended family gathered at Rose's house for brunch, a celebration that Nicole had carefully orchestrated to showcase authentic family bonds and heartfelt appreciation for Carmen's sacrifices throughout our childhood and beyond. The atmosphere felt tense despite the festive decorations and homemade foods that filled Rose's dining room, with family members glancing between Nicole and me as if expecting some kind of confrontation or dramatic revelation. Carmen moved through the gathering with gracious appreciation for the attention and love being showered upon her, but I could see confusion in her eyes about the undercurrent of tension that no one was directly addressing. Nicole had prepared an elaborate presentation for Carmen that included a scrapbook filled with childhood photos, handwritten letters from various family members expressing gratitude for her love and guidance, and a heartfelt speech about the values she had instilled despite economic hardship and single parenthood challenges. The presentation was genuinely touching and represented real effort and thoughtfulness, but it was also clearly designed to establish a standard of meaningful gift-giving that would make any expensive present seem shallow and inappropriate by comparison. The extended family responded with tears and applause as Nicole delivered her tribute, creating an emotional peak that would be difficult for any subsequent gift to match or exceed. When the time came for me to present my gift, the room fell silent with anticipation mixed with apprehension, as if everyone expected me to produce something expensive and inappropriate that would validate Nicole's concerns about my materialistic transformation. I had prepared a simple white envelope containing the house deed and keys, a presentation that deliberately avoided any dramatic flourishes or expensive wrapping that might trigger the negative associations Nicole had worked so hard to create. Carmen accepted the envelope with polite curiosity, assuming it contained a card or small gift certificate, rather than something that would fundamentally change her living situation and financial security. The moment Carmen opened the envelope and saw the deed with her name listed as the property owner, created a silence so profound that I could hear the desert wind rustling through Rosa's backyard trees. Her hands trembled as she read the document, her eyes moving from the property address to her own name and back again as if she couldn't quite process the reality of what she was holding. The house keys fell from the envelope onto her lap with a soft metallic sound that seemed to echo through the stunned silence as everyone in the room began to understand the magnitude of what I had given her. Nicole's face transformed from confident superiority to shock, and then to something approaching horror as she realized that her months of sabotage had been directed against the most generous gift our family had ever witnessed. The extended family members who had participated in the intervention meeting just days earlier began exchanging glances that reflected their growing understanding of how completely they had misinterpreted my behavior and motivations. Rosa covered her mouth with her hands as tears began flowing down her cheeks, the weight of her participation in Nicole's campaign hitting her with visible force as she recognized the injustice of questioning my character while I was secretly planning such an extraordinary act of love. Carmen's emotional response began with disbelief that gradually transformed into overwhelming joy as the reality of home ownership settled into her consciousness. She kept looking from the deed to my face and back again, as if seeking confirmation that this wasn't some kind of mistake or cruel joke that would be snatched away once she allowed herself to believe it was real. When I nodded and told her that the house in Ahwatukee Foothills was truly hers, bought and paid for with no strings attached except my love and gratitude for everything she had sacrificed to give Nicole and me opportunities for better lives, she collapsed into sobs that came from decades of deferred dreams finally becoming reality. The transformation in the room's energy was immediate and profound, as family members began to comprehend the scope of my gift and the injustice of the concerns that had been raised about my character and motivations. Rosa rushed to embrace me, with apologies tumbling from her lips, her remorse evident as she realized how Nicole's manipulation had caused her to doubt someone whose generosity exceeded anything she had ever imagined possible. Maria, still connected via video call from California, began crying as she understood that the secretiveness and behavior changes that had worried everyone were actually the result of planning the most selfless gift our family had ever witnessed. Nicole stood frozen in the corner of the room, her face cycling through emotions as she processed the complete failure of her sabotage campaign and the public exposure of her jealousy and manipulation in front of the entire extended family. The audience that she had carefully cultivated to support her narrative about my materialistic corruption was now witnessing irrefutable evidence that her concerns were based on envy rather than legitimate worry about family values. Her alternative celebration, which had seemed so meaningful and authentic just moments before, now appeared petty and vindictive in comparison to the life-changing generosity that I had secretly planned while enduring her attacks on my character. Carmen's tour of her new house that afternoon became a celebration that included the entire extended family, as everyone piled into cars to drive to Ahwatukee Foothills and witness the reality of the gift that had seemed too extraordinary to believe. The three-bedroom house with mountain views and citrus trees exceeded even Carmen's most optimistic dreams about homeownership, and watching her walk through rooms that belonged to her, touching walls she could paint any color she wanted, and examining the backyard where she could plant a permanent garden, filled me with the pure joy I had anticipated throughout months of secret planning and recent weeks of family conflict. The extended family's response to seeing the house and understanding its value created a unanimous chorus of amazement and gratitude that validated every sacrifice I had made to afford such a generous gift. Rosa kept repeating apologies for doubting my intentions, while Maria called repeatedly from California to express her remorse for participating in Nicole's campaign against me. The relatives who had attended the intervention meeting seemed almost desperate to make amends for their misplaced concerns, showering me with praise and gratitude that felt overwhelming after weeks of defending myself against accusations of materialistic corruption and family abandonment. Nicole's isolation became complete as family members began to understand the extent of her manipulation and the injustice of her campaign against someone whose only crime had been planning an extraordinary surprise that would change Carmen's life forever. Her attempts to minimize the significance of my gift or maintain that her concerns about family values were still valid fell on deaf ears as everyone could see the pure joy and gratitude radiating from Carmen as she explored her new home. The social media followers who had supported her narrative about authentic family love versus materialistic manipulation would never know how wrong their assumptions had been. But the people who mattered most now understood the truth about my character and motivations. The weeks following Mother's Day brought a complete reversal in family dynamics, as Nicole faced consequences for her manipulation campaign, while I enjoyed restored relationships and enhanced respect from relatives who had witnessed the scope of my generosity. Carmen's happiness in her new home became a daily reminder of the power of genuine love, expressed through meaningful action, and her frequent phone calls describing home improvement projects and gardening plans filled me with satisfaction that justified every hour of overtime work and every dollar I had saved to make her home ownership possible. The house became a gathering place for family celebrations, with Carmen hosting dinners and holidays in a space large enough to accommodate everyone comfortably. Nicole's attempts to rebuild relationships after her manipulation was exposed met with mixed success as different family members processed their anger and disappointment at being used as weapons against someone whose only motivation had been love and generosity. Some relatives, particularly Rosa, seemed eager to forgive and move forward with family healing, while others maintained distance from someone who had proven capable of such calculated deception and manipulation. Nicole's social media presence shifted dramatically as she stopped posting content about family values and authentic relationships, perhaps recognizing that her actions had revealed a gap between her public persona and private behavior that undermined her credibility on such topics. The transformation in my own life extended beyond family relationships, as the story of my Mother's Day gift spread through my professional network and client base, enhancing my reputation as someone whose success was motivated by love and family, loyalty, rather than pure personal ambition. Colleagues at Premier Properties expressed amazement at the scope of my generosity, and several clients specifically requested my services after hearing about my gift to Carmen, suggesting that character and values mattered to people making major financial decisions like home purchases. The positive attention felt gratifying after months of questioning and criticism, but more importantly, it validated my belief that success was most meaningful when it enabled generosity toward people who mattered most. Carmen's adjustment to homeownership brought daily discoveries and joys that made every sacrifice worthwhile as she sent photos of her expanding garden, her newly painted bedroom walls, and family gatherings in her spacious living room. Her gratitude never diminished, expressing itself through weekly calls describing her latest home improvement project, or sharing produce from the vegetable garden she had finally been able to plant in soil that belonged to her. The security of homeownership transformed her daily experience from anxiety about rent increases and landlord demands to pride in maintaining and improving a space that was truly hers for as long as she chose to live there. The reconciliation. With Nicole came gradually and incompletely as she slowly acknowledged the extent of her jealousy and manipulation while struggling to rebuild trust with family members who had been hurt by her campaign. Her apologies felt genuine but limited, focusing on her fear of losing me to success rather than fully accepting responsibility for the psychological warfare she had waged against someone whose only crime had been planning an extraordinary surprise. The relationship between us evolved into something more cautious and boundaried than our childhood closeness, a dynamic that felt sad but necessary, given the revelation of how deeply envy could corrupt someone I had loved and protected since childhood. The Mother's Day gift that nearly destroyed our family ultimately strengthened the bonds between people who mattered most, while revealing the character flaws that needed to be addressed before genuine healing could occur. Carmen's homeownership became a symbol of what was possible when love was expressed through meaningful action rather than empty words. And the joy she found in her new life validated every sacrifice I had made to provide such a transformative gift. The house in Awadaki foothills represented more than shelter or investment property. It embodied the fulfillment of dreams deferred by economic hardship and the power of family loyalty expressed through genuine generosity rather than manipulation or control. Looking back on the journey from secret planning, through family conflict, to ultimate vindication, I understood that true generosity required courage to act on love despite opposition, and the wisdom to persist with good intentions, even when they were misunderstood or attacked by people whose jealousy clouded their judgment. Carmen's happiness in her new home provided daily confirmation that some gifts transcend monetary value to create lasting transformation in the lives of people who matter most. The experience taught me that family loyalty sometimes meant standing firm against family members whose behavior threatened the well-being of others, and that protecting genuine love required defending it against those who would corrupt it with envy and manipulation. The story that began with secret house hunting and ended with family reconciliation became a reminder that meaningful change often required privacy and patience, as well as the strength to maintain good intentions despite criticism and opposition from unexpected sources. Nicole's transformation from beloved sister to active saboteur revealed how success could trigger unexpected reactions in people closest to us. But Carmen's joy in home ownership proved that genuine love and generosity would ultimately triumph over jealousy and manipulation. The Mother's Day gift that almost destroyed our family became the foundation for stronger relationships built on truth, respect, and the kind of boundaries that protect authentic love from those who would exploit or corrupt it for their own purposes. The silence that followed Carmen's discovery of the house deed stretched across Rosa's living room like a held breath, broken only by the soft sound of paper rustling, as my mother read and reread the document that proclaimed her the legal owner of a 3-bedroom home in Ahwatukee foothills. Nicole's confident smile had vanished completely, replaced by an expression of dawning horror, as she began to comprehend that her months of sabotage had been directed against the most selfless act our family had ever witnessed. The extended family, members who had gathered for what they expected to be a simple Mother's Day brunch, found themselves witnesses to a revelation that would fundamentally alter their understanding of family loyalty, generosity, and the destructive power of unchecked jealousy. Carmen's hands shook as she held the keys, turning them over in her palm as if they might disappear if she loosened her grip. The woman who had worked double shifts for years to keep our family afloat, who had scraped together rent money every month while dreaming of a garden she could plant without asking permission, was now holding the means to enter a home that belonged entirely to her. Her voice came out as barely a whisper when she asked if this was real, if the deed bearing her name actually meant what it appeared to mean, and whether I had truly spent my savings to give her something she had never dared hope to achieve on her own. The confirmation that yes, the house was real, and yes, it was hers with no conditions or expectations beyond my love and gratitude, triggered an emotional response that seemed to emanate from decades of deferred dreams finally being acknowledged and fulfilled. Carmen's tears came in waves that shook her entire body. Years of quietly accepting that homeownership was beyond her reach, suddenly replaced by the incredible reality that she owned property in one of Phoenix's most desirable neighborhoods. The sight of her overwhelming joy validated every hour of overtime I had worked and every dollar I had saved in secret while enduring Nicole's increasingly aggressive campaign to undermine my character and motivations. Rosa was the first family member to fully process what had occurred, her own tears beginning as she realized the scope of my gift and the injustice of the concerns she had raised about my behavior and priorities. Her immediate rush to embrace me came with stammered apologies about doubting my intentions while I was secretly planning the most generous gesture our family had ever witnessed. The woman who had helped raise me after my father's abandonment understood better than anyone how significant homeownership would be for Carmen, and her recognition of the sacrifice required to make such a gift possible brought its own emotional weight to an already overwhelming moment. Maria's voice through the video call from California added another layer of family recognition as she processed the revelation that my supposed withdrawal from family values had actually been the preparation for an act of love that exceeded anything she had ever imagined possible. Her tears and repeated apologies for participating in Nicole's intervention created a chorus of remorse from family members who had allowed themselves to be manipulated into questioning someone whose only secret had been planning an extraordinary surprise. The collective realization that Nicole's concerns had been motivated by jealousy rather than legitimate worry about family dynamics created a palpable shift in the room's energy as relatives began to understand how completely they had been deceived. Nicole stood frozen in the corner where she had positioned herself to observe what she had expected to be my humiliation or the exposure of some inappropriate materialistic gesture that would validate her campaign against my character. Instead, she found herself witnessing the complete vindication of everything I had worked toward, while her own manipulation was exposed in front of the entire extended family. Her face cycled through expressions of shock, denial, and growing panic as she realized that her months of psychological warfare had not only failed, but had revealed her own capacity for calculated deception and family sabotage. The extended family's response to understanding the true nature of my gift created an atmosphere of celebration mixed with remorse, as relatives who had questioned my motivations began expressing amazement at the scope of my generosity and gratitude for the transformation they were witnessing in Carmen's life. Uncle Roberto, who had remained mostly silent during the intervention meeting, stepped forward to shake my hand with tears in his eyes, acknowledging that he had never witnessed such selfless love expressed through meaningful action. His words seemed to give permission for other family members to express their own amazement and appreciation, creating a wave of positive energy that stood in stark contrast to the suspicion and concern that had dominated recent family gatherings. Carmen's request to see the house immediately transformed the Mother's Day celebration into a caravan of vehicles following my car toward Ahwatukee foothills, with family members calling others who hadn't attended the brunch to share news of the incredible gift and invite them to witness Carmen's first exploration of her new home. The drive through increasingly upscale neighborhoods provided time for the reality of homeownership to settle into Carmen's consciousness, and I watched through my rearview mirror as she pressed her face to the window of Rosa's car, taking in surroundings that would now be part of her daily life, rather than just a distant aspiration. The moment Carmen first saw the house that belonged to her created another wave of overwhelming emotion as she took in the mountain views, mature landscaping, and spacious layout that exceeded even her most optimistic dreams about what homeownership might look like. Her slow walk around the property, touching walls and examining rooms with the wonder of someone who had never expected to own anything more substantial than furniture, provided a visual representation of dreams being fulfilled that moved every family member to tears. The master bedroom with its panoramic mountain views, the kitchen with granite countertops perfect for her cooking projects, And the backyard with citrus trees and space for the vegetable garden she had always wanted created a sensory experience of homeownership that made the gift feel real and permanent. The extended family's tour of the house became a celebration of Carmen's new life, as relatives explored rooms that belonged to someone they loved, imagining future holiday gatherings and family celebrations in a space large enough to accommodate everyone comfortably. The house represented more than shelter or financial investment. It embodied the fulfillment of the American dream for someone who had worked tirelessly to provide opportunities for her children, despite economic obstacles that had seemed insurmountable. Rosa's comment that Carmen deserved every beautiful detail of her new home reflected the family's understanding that the gift represented justice as much as generosity, acknowledging years of sacrifice that had finally been rewarded with security and pride. Nicole's isolation during the house tour became increasingly evident as family members focused their attention on celebrating Carmen's good fortune, while essentially ignoring the person whose jealousy and manipulation had created unnecessary conflict during what should have been a purely joyful process. Her attempts to participate in the celebration or minimize the significance of my gift were met with polite but distant responses from relatives who were processing their anger about being used as weapons against someone whose only motivation had been love and family loyalty. The social dynamics that had supported her campaign against me had completely reversed, leaving her to confront the consequences of her behavior without the enabling support system she had carefully constructed. Carmen's exploration of her new kitchen revealed the practical implications of home ownership as she opened cabinets and drawers while mentally planning meals she would prepare in a space designed for serious cooking rather than the cramped galley kitchen of her rental house. Her excitement about hosting Thanksgiving dinner and Christmas celebrations in a dining room large enough for the entire extended family reflected her understanding that the house would become a gathering place for future family memories. The security of ownership meant she could make improvements and changes without seeking landlord approval, a freedom that had been denied throughout her adult life, but would now allow her to create a home that truly reflected her personality and preferences. The afternoon celebration extended into evening as family members lingered in Carmen's new home, reluctant to leave the magical atmosphere created by witnessing dreams become reality through the power of genuine love and sacrifice. The impromptu housewarming party included takeout food eaten on the living room floor because Carmen didn't yet have dining room furniture, but the joy and gratitude filling the space made it feel more festive than any formal celebration could have achieved. The sight of my mother surrounded by relatives who were celebrating her good fortune while sitting in rooms that belonged to her created the exact emotional experience I had envisioned during months of secret planning and saving. The transformation in family relationships became evident as relatives who had participated in Nicole's intervention began approaching me individually to express their remorse about questioning my character and to acknowledge the extraordinary nature of what I had accomplished. Their recognition that my supposed withdrawal from family activities had actually been the preparation for an act of unprecedented generosity created a new level of respect and appreciation that enhanced rather than complicated our relationships. The experience had revealed the difference between authentic concern and manipulative jealousy, teaching everyone involved to be more discerning about the motivations behind family members' expressions of worry or criticism. Nicole's eventual departure from the celebration occurred without fanfare or extended goodbyes, as she seemed to recognize that her presence was no longer welcome in the atmosphere of joy and gratitude that surrounded Carmen's homeownership experience. Her social media posts over the following days reflected a significant shift in tone, with content about personal growth and learning from mistakes replacing her previous focus on family values and authentic relationships. The public platform she had used to build support for her campaign against me became a space for reflection and apparent soul-searching, though the sincerity of her transformation remained questionable, given the calculated nature of her previous manipulation. The weeks following Mother's Day brought daily phone calls from Carmen, describing her adjustment to homeownership and the small discoveries that made her new life feel increasingly real and permanent. Her reports about painting the guest bedroom, planting vegetables in her backyard garden, and hosting her first dinner party for neighbors reflected the confidence and pride that came with owning property in a community where she felt valued and welcomed. The security deposit she had recovered from her rental house became funding for furniture and decorations that would make the new house feel completely like home, while the money she saved on lower monthly mortgage payments allowed her to finally build an emergency fund for the first time in her adult life. My professional reputation within the real estate industry received an unexpected boost as news of my Mother's Day gift spread through my network of colleagues and clients, with several people specifically requesting my services after hearing about my generosity toward family. The story became a powerful demonstration that financial success was most meaningful when it enabled meaningful gestures toward people who mattered most. And clients seemed drawn to working with someone whose values aligned with their own beliefs about family loyalty and responsible wealth management. The positive attention felt gratifying after months of defending my character against unjustified criticism, but more importantly, it validated my belief that professional achievement should serve larger purposes than personal accumulation. Carmen's first Mother's Day in her own home the following year provided an opportunity to reflect on the transformation that had occurred through the power of genuine love expressed through meaningful action. The celebration took place in her spacious backyard among the citrus trees and vegetable garden she had cultivated during her first year of home ownership, with extended family gathering around tables she could afford to purchase because home ownership had improved her monthly budget. The contrast between the anxiety and conflict that had surrounded the previous year's celebration and the pure joy and gratitude filling her property demonstrated how authentic generosity could overcome even the most sophisticated manipulation campaigns. Nicole's gradual reintegration into family gatherings occurred slowly and with significant boundaries, as relatives required time to rebuild trust with someone who had proven capable of such calculated deception and emotional manipulation. Her apparent efforts at personal growth and her acknowledgement of the jealousy that had motivated her campaign seemed genuine but incomplete, focusing more on her fear of losing me to success than fully accepting responsibility for the psychological warfare she had waged against someone whose only crime had been planning an extraordinary surprise. The relationship between us evolved into something more cautious and formal than our childhood closeness, a dynamic that felt necessary given the revelation of how deeply envy could corrupt someone I had loved and protected since our father's abandonment. The house in Ahwatukee Foothills became more than Carmen's residence. It transformed into a symbol of what was possible when family members supported each other's dreams, rather than competing for resources or recognition. Her pride in home ownership extended beyond personal satisfaction to include gratitude for the opportunities she could now provide for future grandchildren, knowing that the house would remain in our family and serve as a foundation for generational wealth building. The investment aspect of the gift continued to appreciate in value while providing Carmen with security and dignity that had been absent during decades of rental housing and economic uncertainty. The experience of giving Carmen her dream home taught me that meaningful generosity required more than financial resources. It demanded courage to act on love despite opposition and the wisdom to persist with good intentions, even when they were misunderstood or attacked by people whose judgment was clouded by personal insecurity. The months of secret planning while enduring Nicole's campaign had tested my commitment to the surprise, but Carmen's daily happiness in her new life confirmed that protecting authentic love sometimes meant defending it against family members whose behavior threatened the well-being of others. The gift that had nearly destroyed our family ultimately strengthened the bonds between people who mattered most while revealing character flaws that needed to be addressed before genuine healing could occur. Looking back on the journey from initial house hunting through family conflict to ultimate vindication, I understood that true family loyalty sometimes required standing firm against family members whose actions contradicted their stated values of love and support. Carmen's transformation from anxious renter to confident homeowner provided daily confirmation that some gifts transcend monetary value to create lasting change in the lives of people who deserve recognition for their sacrifices and dedication. The Mother's Day surprise that began as a simple expression of gratitude evolved into a lesson about the power of authentic generosity to overcome jealousy, manipulation, and the kind of family dynamics that prioritize competition over collaboration and support. The story that started with secret savings and ended with family reconciliation became a reminder that meaningful change often required privacy and patience, as well as the strength to maintain good intentions despite criticism from unexpected sources. Nicole's transformation from beloved sister to active saboteur revealed how success could trigger unpredictable reactions in people closest to us. But Carmen's joy in homeownership proved that genuine love and generosity would ultimately triumph over envy and manipulation. The house keys that had felt so significant in my hands during months of planning became symbols of dreams fulfilled through persistence, love, and the kind of family loyalty that expresses itself through actions rather than words or social media posts about authentic relationships. The ripple effects of that Mother's Day revelation continued to transform our family dynamics in ways I never could have anticipated during those months of secret planning and saving. Carmen's adjustment to homeownership became a masterclass in dignity and grace as she navigated the practical aspects of property ownership, while processing the emotional magnitude of receiving such an extraordinary gift. Her daily discoveries about home maintenance, neighborhood relationships, and the freedom to make permanent improvements created a constant stream of phone calls, filled with excitement about everything from selecting paint colors to planning her first major holiday celebration in a space that truly belonged to her. The professional implications of my generosity toward Carmen extended far beyond the initial positive attention from colleagues and clients, evolving into a reputation for integrity and family values that became a significant competitive advantage in the real estate industry. Referrals from clients who had heard about my Mother's Day gift consistently mentioned their appreciation for working with someone whose success enabled meaningful generosity rather than just personal accumulation. The story became a powerful demonstration of how financial achievement could serve larger purposes, and my business grew substantially as people sought to work with someone whose values aligned with their own beliefs about family loyalty and responsible wealth management. Nicole's social media presence underwent a dramatic transformation following the exposure of her manipulation campaign, with her content shifting from confident pronouncements about authentic relationships to more introspective posts about personal growth and learning from mistakes. Her follower engagement declined significantly as people sensed the change in her tone and message, but her apparent commitment to genuine self-reflection suggested that the public humiliation of her jealousy might have catalyzed real psychological development. The process of rebuilding trust with family members who had witnessed her capacity for calculated deception required sustained effort and accountability that challenged her previous patterns of avoiding responsibility for harmful behavior. Carmen's first Christmas in her new home became a landmark celebration that showcased the practical benefits of homeownership, while creating new family traditions around gathering in a space large enough to accommodate everyone comfortably. The dining room that had seemed almost impossibly spacious during our initial house tour proved perfect for hosting extended family meals, while the living room's open floor plan allowed multiple conversations and activities to occur simultaneously without feeling cramped or chaotic. Her joy in decorating her own property for the holidays, hanging lights and ornaments without seeking landlord approval, represented a freedom she had never experienced during decades of rental housing. The financial education that homeownership required became an unexpected source of empowerment for Carmen as she learned about property taxes, insurance options, and maintenance budgets that transformed her relationship with money from survival-focused spending to strategic planning for asset preservation and improvement. Her monthly mortgage payments, which were actually lower than her previous rent, allowed her to build equity while creating breathing room in her budget for emergency savings and small luxuries that had been impossible during years of economic uncertainty. The psychological impact of building wealth through homeownership, rather than simply covering housing costs, created a sense of financial security that influenced every aspect of her daily life. My relationship with David, the mortgage broker who had helped facilitate Carmen's house purchase, evolved into a professional partnership that generated significant business for both of us as we developed a reputation for helping families achieve homeownership dreams that might otherwise remain unattainable. Our collaboration on creative financing solutions for first-time buyers, particularly single mothers and young families facing economic challenges similar to our own background, became a meaningful extension of the values that had motivated my gift to Carmen. The personal satisfaction of helping other families experience the security and pride of homeownership added deeper purpose to my professional activities beyond the financial rewards of successful transactions. The neighborhood in Ahwatukee Foothills embraced Carmen with the kind of community spirit that made her daily life richer and more connected than anything she had experienced in previous rental situations. Her next-door neighbors, an elderly couple named Frank and Margaret who had lived in the area for 30 years, became surrogate grandparents who shared gardening advice and invited her to community events that helped her establish roots in a social environment that valued stability and mutual support. The Homeowners Association meetings and neighborhood watch programs provided opportunities for civic engagement that had been unavailable to her as a renter, creating a sense of investment in community welfare that extended beyond her individual property. Nicole's attempts to rebuild family relationships faced significant resistance from relatives who remained angry about her manipulation campaign and skeptical about the sincerity of her apparent transformation. Rosa, who had been particularly hurt by being used as a weapon against me, required months of consistent behavior change before she was willing to engage in meaningful conversations about forgiveness and reconciliation. The process of earning back trust revealed to Nicole the long-term consequences of manipulative behavior, while also demonstrating the family's commitment to accountability and authentic relationship repair, rather than superficial peacemaking that ignored serious wrongdoing. Carmen's expansion of her vegetable garden during her first spring as a homeowner became a metaphor for the growth and abundance that homeownership had brought to her life. The raised beds she constructed in her backyard produced tomatoes, peppers, and herbs that supplied not only her own kitchen, but also provided gifts for neighbors and family members who appreciated the fruits of her labor in both literal and symbolic terms. Her pride in sharing produce she had grown in soil that belonged to her reflected the psychological transformation from scarcity mindset to abundance, thinking that homeownership had facilitated through the security of permanent residence and investment in long-term planning. The tax benefits of homeownership created unexpected financial advantages for Carmen that enhanced the value of my gift beyond the initial purchase price, as mortgage interest deductions and property tax write-offs improved her overall financial picture in ways that had lasting impact on her economic security. Her accountant's excitement about optimizing her tax strategy as a homeowner rather than a renter provided education about wealth-building opportunities that had been theoretical rather than practical during years of rental housing. The financial literacy that homeownership required and enabled became a foundation for making informed decisions about insurance, maintenance, and future property improvements that would preserve and enhance her investment. My own housing situation evolved during Carmen's first year of homeownership, as I began considering purchasing a larger home that would accommodate my growing business needs, while also providing space for family gatherings and entertaining clients in a professional yet personal environment. The success of my gift to Carmen had demonstrated the emotional satisfaction that came from using financial resources to create meaningful change in the lives of people who mattered most, inspiring me to think more strategically about how future investments could serve both practical needs and deeper values about family support and community building. The extended family's annual gatherings shifted to Carmen's house by unanimous agreement, as relatives recognized that her spacious home and evident joy in hosting created an ideal environment for celebrations that honored family traditions while embracing the enhanced comfort and convenience that homeownership provided. Thanksgiving dinners moved from cramped apartments and rented community rooms to Carmen's dining room, where she could display family heirlooms and create holiday decorations that didn't need to be temporary or landlord approved. The permanence of her decorating choices reflected the security of ownership, while also creating a family gathering place that belonged to someone who had earned the honor through decades of sacrifice and dedication. Nicole's relationship with Tyler ended during her period of family exile, as the stress of confronting her behavior and its consequences revealed incompatibilities in their values and goals that had been masked by their shared criticism of my success and apparent materialism. Tyler's encouragement of Nicole's jealousy and manipulation became less appealing when she began recognizing the destructive nature of such attitudes, while his lack of ambition and entitlement mentality contrasted sharply with the work ethic and generosity she was trying to develop in herself. The breakup represented another consequence of her choices, while also creating space for potential growth that might not have been possible within a relationship that reinforced negative patterns. Carmen's financial advisor, whom I had recommended when her improved budget allowed for professional guidance about investment and retirement planning, helped her understand how homeownership had fundamentally altered her long-term financial prospects in ways that extended far beyond monthly housing costs. The equity building that occurred automatically through mortgage payments created a wealth accumulation strategy that had been impossible during rental years, while the stability of fixed housing costs protected her from inflation and rent increases that could have undermined her economic security in retirement. Her growing understanding of personal finance empowered her to make informed decisions about home improvements, insurance coverage, and emergency fund management that enhanced both her current quality of life and future financial stability. The YE home improvement projects that Carmen undertook during her first year of ownership reflected both practical needs and personal expression that had been constrained during decades of rental housing. Her decision to update the master bathroom with fixtures that accommodated her preferences created a spa-like environment that made daily routines feel luxurious rather than merely functional. The kitchen backsplash she installed herself, with help from YouTube tutorials and advice from Frank next door, represented not only aesthetic improvement, but also the empowerment that came from being able to modify her living space according to her own vision and timeline. My annual Mother's Day gift the following year acknowledged the transformation that homeownership had brought to Carmen's life, while also establishing a tradition of meaningful presence that honored our relationship and her ongoing contributions to family welfare. The professional landscaping service I arranged for her backyard created a beautiful outdoor living space that showcased the mature citrus trees while adding flower beds and decorative elements that enhanced both her daily enjoyment and the property's value. The gift demonstrated my continued commitment to supporting her happiness and success, while also providing practical benefits that aligned with homeownership responsibilities and opportunities. Nicole's gradual reintegration into family activities required careful navigation of boundaries and expectations that protected family members from further manipulation, while also allowing for genuine relationship repair if her behavioral changes proved sustainable over time. Her participation in family gatherings at Carmen's house remained limited and conditional, with relatives monitoring her interactions for signs of renewed jealousy or attempts to undermine the family harmony that had been restored following her campaign against me. The process of rebuilding trust revealed the long-term damage that manipulative behavior could cause, while also demonstrating the family's capacity for forgiveness when accompanied by genuine accountability and sustained change. Carmen's second Mother's Day as a homeowner featured a garden party in her backyard that showcased both the physical beauty of her property and the emotional contentment that homeownership had brought to her daily life. The celebration included neighbors alongside family members, reflecting the community connections that had developed through her investment in the neighborhood and her commitment to being a contributing member of the local social fabric. Her confidence as a hostess and her pride in sharing her beautiful home created an atmosphere of joy and gratitude that validated every sacrifice I had made to provide such a transformative gift. The long-term impact of my Mother's Day gift extended beyond Carmen's individual transformation to influence family values and expectations about success, generosity, and mutual support. that would shape future generations' understanding of what family loyalty could accomplish. The house in Ahwatukee foothills became a symbol of what was possible when family members prioritized each other's welfare over personal accumulation, creating a legacy of generosity that inspired other relatives to consider how their own achievements could serve larger purposes than individual advancement. The story of the gift became family lore that reinforced values about hard work, sacrifice, and the importance of using success to lift up people who mattered most. The professional network that developed around my reputation for integrity and family values created opportunities for collaboration with other real estate professionals who shared similar beliefs about the importance of homeownership in building family stability and community strength. Joint ventures with mortgage brokers, contractors, and financial advisors who appreciated my approach to client service resulted in a comprehensive support system for families pursuing homeownership dreams that might otherwise seem unattainable. The business growth that resulted from this values-based approach to professional development provided both financial rewards and personal satisfaction that made work feel meaningful rather than merely profitable. Carmen's involvement in community organizations and volunteer activities reflected her growing confidence and sense of civic responsibility that homeownership had fostered through her investment in neighborhood welfare and local governance. Her participation in the Homeowners Association Board and her volunteer work with organizations supporting single mothers demonstrated how personal stability and security could enable broader community contributions that benefited people facing challenges similar to those she had overcome. The transformation from survival mode to service orientation represented one of the most meaningful outcomes of the gift that had initially seemed focused purely on individual housing security. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.